We start by launching Excel reports from the Tools menu inside Business One. At this point, Excel will open up with additional two menu bars from the plugins we installed. One for Excel reports, one for interactive analysis. If we were launching Excel without Business One, we would go to the options, add-ins, select COM add-ins, and then add the Business One, Excel report, and interactive analysis menu. Now we can start building the report. We start with a new Excel report. So first we need to select a data source. The data source can be any semantic layer or calculation view that is in the database, whether it's pre-delivered or custom. I'm going to go with the inventory status, where I can see the measures, the dimensions, and click OK. To start building the report, I will start by selecting a dimension and drag it into the report area. I will start with item code and description. Click OK to confirm the initial borders of the report. Now I'm going to start adding some measures: in stock quantity, committed quantity, ordered and available quantity, and as well I'm going to add the in-stock inventory valuation. Now I already have a report. I can run it, check and see what I'm getting. This is my initial report. Now I would like to group this data by item group. I'm going to need to insert a column in the beginning, so I have space for that. And on the row level, I'm going to go ahead and add a parent group for item group name. The system will add the grouping as well as the field itself, and now I have the same report, only grouped by item group name. Let's go ahead and improve the report by adding some totals at the bottom of the report. So I'm simply going to type in totals, and I'm going to use the calculation field to drag and drop the sum, in this case for the in-stock quantity. All I need to do is adjust the reference field. In this case it's going to be F7, row 7. And I'm going to do the same for the rest of the fields. Now note that if I were to do a regular Excel sum, it would not work appropriately because this is an expanding row. So it will only summarize the first row. So therefore I need to use the Excel calculation. I'm going to do the same for the rest. And let's go ahead and run the report again to see that I'm getting what I expected. Here are the totals at the bottom of the page. Since it is Excel, I can go ahead and do some formatting that is standard within the Excel function. So in this case, I'm going to set up all the quantities as a number with 2 decimals, and the inventory valuation as a currency with the US dollar currency symbol. You can do some formatting in terms of colors and make it bold, change the font, and so on. And let's go ahead and run the report once again. And here are my format changes applied to the report. Now if you notice, the totals are in row 9. If I want to include a total for each item group, I'm going to expand the group selection over row 9. So now I have a total for each and every group. If I wanted to add a grand total in the bottom, I can put it in row 10. Now let's go ahead and apply a group to the column. In this case, I want to be able to group this report by warehouse. on the column level. So I'm going to add a group column for a warehouse name. I'm going to expand the column to include all 5 columns, so they all apply to that warehouse. So now we will have multiple columns for all this information, again for each and every warehouse in the database. Now this is a little bit hard to read, so let's go ahead and make it look a little bit better. So what I'm going to do first is add a row above and include the warehouse name so I know what I'm looking at. Now I'm going to use an Excel function to merge the cells that I highlighted so the warehouse is kind of in the middle. In addition, I'm going to apply a color and formatting. And run the report. Now it's much more clear what I'm looking at. So I get a quick report of inventory status by item group by warehouse. Now let's improve the report a little bit. I'm going to actually expand the group over column K and then make column K a little bit shorter just to add spaces between each warehouse. So once again, it's just easier to read that way. Now I'm pretty much done with the report. I'm going to save the report as. When I save as, I'm going to see the pre-delivered packages or directories where I can save the reports underneath. And this will go into the Business One main menu. One thing I have to do is refresh by either logging out or in or just change company and logging in again for the menu to get updated. And now looking under the inventory, I will find my inventory report by items and warehouses. Just clicking on it, it's going to read the data live from the database and open it in Excel. If I wanted to go back and make changes to the report, I can launch the Excel reports again. And this time I'm going to open a report instead of starting a new report. And I'm back in the designer window where I can continue editing the report. Now let's look at another report that I created previously for aging report, and we'll see how to use formulas and parameters. So it's a customer aging. It's based on the customer aging semantic layer. Run it, and I can see I have a report grouped by salesperson for every customer by time buckets. First thing, I want to add a calculation field for this time it's going to be an average of the number of outstanding days. Now, this semantic layer actually includes built-in parameters, 3 of them, one for aging date, one for a customer type, and one for aging bucket. If I wanted to allow the users to input those parameters whenever they run the report, I'm going to create a parameter and tie it back, link it to the semantic layer parameter. In this case, I want to do bucket size, and the default value is 30. Now when I run the report, I can go ahead and select the bucket size, and it's not hard-coded in the report that it's 30, but I can select every time a different size. Let's look at some group settings. Here I can identify sorting. In this case, sorting of the columns. I noticed it was in descending order, so I changed it to ascending order. So now my buckets are starting from the closest to the furthest away. I can also add those parameters to the report printout. So if I want to know what I'm looking at, I put in some space at the top of the report. And now I can go ahead and simply add the parameter itself to the report printout. Another nice function is filtering and time functions. If I wanted to only run the report, for example, for this year, I don't want to see everything that's open. So I can go ahead and identify a value manually, basically hard-coded. But instead I can use a time function, and the time function allow me to apply a dynamic value rather than hard-coding the year or the date. In this case, for example, I can choose year to date. I can choose a specific calendar month. I can do some comparison. We will see that in the next example, and so on. I'm going to keep it on year to date and run the report. Select the bucket size. And now I know this report is only for year to date with the bucket size that I selected. Finally, let's build a quick new report based on the profitability analysis semantic layer. This would be, once again, some kind of sales report based on item group and code. I'm going to add a measure for quantity and for sales. So I want to see how much I sold of specific items. It's always good to run the report with every change that you apply. Now this semantic layer doesn't have any parameters. So in this case, I can create a parameter that is actually a dynamic type. A dynamic parameter goes directly to the data source where I can read the data from there. For example, I would like to do some filtering on item group and select, for example, the default to be items. Running the report will still doesn't apply the filtering. I still see a full list. In order to apply the parameter that I just created, I need to go ahead into the filtering of the group and identify the dimension items. The field is item group equals, and then the parameter rather than a particular value. So once again, it will allow the users to select the parameter or the group when I run the report. Let's go ahead and select JB printers. And I see now the filtering does apply based on the group I selected. Same as I did before, I'm going to add the group selection parameter into the report printout. So I know again what I'm looking at. So the more information you can add, the better for the users. Now every time, depending on the group I selected, here is the group printed. What I want to do next is apply grouping on column F and column G. So I'm going to go ahead and add group by year. So I'm going to go ahead into one of the date dimensions and select, for example, posting years. Run the report. Now I should see every year item sales. Now the problem is I actually need to sort it. So let's go ahead and sort it in ascending order and run the report. And now I see it accordingly the way I wanted to see it. I would also need to, I forgot to actually apply the selection on both columns of quantity and net sales. Otherwise, it's not going to really look, it's not going to make sense. I'm going to apply some formatting, make it look a little better, merge those cells, and run the report. So that looks good. Next, what I want to do is use the time functions to apply some time restriction. So I'm going to go ahead and once again select the dynamic time function, one of those dynamic time functions we looked at before, and choose year to date. So I want to see sales of items of a particular group for the current year. Now I would like to add a comparison of that sales to last year. So it's very simple. All I need to do is add another condition to the time function. And this time the value would be a comparison to last year. So I'm going to select the last dynamic time function where I can enter, if I leave it empty, it's just going to be last year, or I can enter a date and a number of how many years back I want to compare it to. Here you go. I have a comparison between 2018 and 2019. The advantage of using these dynamic time functions is that they always apply. So if I run that same report next year, it's going to compare 2020 to 2019 without me having to change anything in the report. In the meantime, we're going and applying some formats, some improving the report layout. And pretty much the report is ready. So now I see a nice comparison between both years for the two columns. Of course, I can add some formulas that calculate the difference in percentage or in amount between the 2 years. This one I'm going to save under the sales menu and provide it with a name to save it back to the Business One main menu. Another way of accessing my Excel reports is using the Analytics portal. I'm going to launch a browser and log in to the Analytics portal, which is basically my server name, port number, /portal. Select my company database and enter my credentials. Of course, it's going to be a user with a license inside Business One. I'm going to see the reports that I'm authorized to see from the different folders as they are built in the SAP main menu. I can see my aging report. I can see the inventory report I created. If I take a look at the first report I created, I set it as favorite. I can set up a schedule to run the report in different formats based on a frequency, put a start and an end date, and enter email or distribution list to be sent it to. If I look at my favorite reports, I can see that report already was running in the past. It has a history. The system record every instance and save it when the report was running. If I look at the instance I ran before, I can see how I don't even need Excel. And of course, I don't need Business One in order to run those reports in the analytical portal. I can download it in different formats and send it by email. Once again, to even users that are non-Business One users. In terms of authorizations, the user, in order to access these Excel reports, there are different authorizations. First of all, there is a separate authorizations for the designer. And then every report I save back to the menu will be here as well. And the last thing I need to make sure is that the user is authorized to the appropriate semantic layer the report is built on. And once I have all these three, I can build and access reports.